Title: Shadow of the Flying Guillotine. Chapter 1. Whispers of Blood. The night air in Baihe Valley was thick with fog, curling like spectral fingers around the withered trunks of old pine trees. A lone figure moved through the mist, silent, fluid, deadly. Clad in weather-worn robes the color of dried blood, the man's face was obscured beneath a wide straw hat. In his hand, he held a leather-wrapped case no longer than a forearm. Inside it lay a weapon outlawed by every martial sect and imperial decree: the Flying Guillotine. The man's name was Kuang Tianbao, known in the darker corners of the Jianghu as Master Kuang, the blind demon. Though his eyes were milky with blindness, his other senses were sharp as steel. Years ago he had walked the path of righteousness as a respected monk from the Deluo temple. Now he followed the scent of vengeance. Tonight, his target was the Cloudwater sect. High atop a cliff overlooking the valley, lanterns flickered in the mountain hall of the Cloudwater sect. A festival was underway to honor the Spring Blossom Tournament. Martial disciples filled the open courtyard, sipping rice wine and watching as two fighters sparred in the moonlight. Among them stood Elder Zheng, his silver beard braided, his hands behind his back. He sensed something, a ripple in the air, a whisper on the wind. "Ready yourselves," he muttered. Before anyone could react, the lights died. A whistling shriek sliced through the night like a banshee's wail. Then, a sickening thump. When the lanterns were relit, a disciple's headless body lay sprawled across the tiles. Panic erupted. From the shadows, Master Kuang emerged, the flying guillotine spinning in his hand like a phantom's halo. One by one, sect elders and warriors fell, unable to counter the deadly precision of a blind master fueled by rage. By dawn, the Cloudwater sect was ash and memory. Far from the massacre, in a dusty village near the southern marshlands, a young fighter named Shen watched travelers pass by as he swept the steps of a tea house. The clang of swords, the thrill of duels. Those were dreams buried beneath his humble life. But that morning, a wounded man stumbled into the village bearing news of the slaughter. Shen listened carefully as the man, gasping his final breaths, uttered a name that would change his life forever. Master Kuang, the Flying Guillotine, has returned. Li's hands tightened on the broom. Something stirred within him, not fear, but something deeper, purpose. And so, the wheel of fate began to turn. Chapter 2. Blades beneath moonlight. The night breeze carried with it the scent of old blood and blooming plum blossoms. Deep in the mountains beyond Jiangnan, the sect of silent blades gathered beneath an ancient moonlit shrine. Their black robes shifted with each breath of wind, and the gleam of steel flashed with ritual precision. Liang Feng, having survived the massacre of his village and discovered the severed remains of his clan's forgotten martial legacy, now stood at the threshold of a new world. The old hermit, Master Kuang, had taken him as an apprentice not for his strength, but for the raw rage in his eyes and the curious defiance in his stance. "Strength," Master Kuang said, pouring a steaming pot of bitter tea, "is like fire. It consumes the weak and tempers the worthy. But you have been tempered by hate. That can forge something useful." The old master revealed a scroll, weathered silk inked with forbidden calligraphy, the 12 shadow steps of the Flying Guillotine. The technique, long thought to be a myth, was brutal, requiring both precision and detachment. The weapon, an executioner's tool shaped like a folding umbrella laced with blades, could decapitate a man in a single flick of the wrist, and only those who mastered the movement of shadow and wind could wield it. Training was unrelenting. Liang Feng's body bore welts and bruises from wooden stakes, falling stones and bladed fans hurled from impossible angles. But each night, he grew faster, his footsteps quieter, his reactions sharper. Meanwhile, word of Liang Feng's survival spread among those who had sought to erase him. General Du Jian, The tyrant who ordered his family's extermination sent his men scouring the southern provinces. One such assassin, a woman with silver hair and a black lotus tattoo named Mei Ru, had once known Liang Feng. She remembered him not as a warrior, but as a boy who cried under a broken tree when his sister died. Her orders were simple: kill him before the rebellion begins. As Liang's training approached its climax, Master Kuang handed him a final challenge. "Descend the mountain," he said, "and bring me the head of your fear." Armed with the flying guillotine and clothed in silence, Liang Feng left the shrine beneath the full moon, unaware that Mei Ru waited in the valley below, her blades oiled and her heart undecided. The mountain wind whispered of fate, and steel glinted under moonlight, as two ghosts of the past prepared to clash in the shadows. Chapter 3. The Crimson Arena. The sun blazed high above the city of Lianzhou, casting its golden light upon a vast coliseum nestled in the heart of the city. Known as the Crimson Arena, it was a place of blood, honor, and spectacle, where warriors gathered from across the provinces to test their skills, prove their mettle, and for some, earn their freedom. Wei Yun, now disguised as a wandering herbalist, stepped into the crowd. His wide-brimmed hat shadowed his eyes, and his modest garb betrayed nothing of his true skill. He had followed whispers of the Flying Guillotine to this very place, where a man known only as the Red Viper was rumored to wield the forbidden weapon. Inside the arena, drums thundered as the crowd roared. Two warriors clashed in the sand, their blades flashing under the sun. Wei Yun watched with quiet detachment until the victor raised a familiar curved blade, unmistakably a guillotine, spinning it in his hand like a dance of death. "The Red Viper," someone muttered beside him. "A monster in human skin." Wei Yun's jaw clenched. He stepped away from the crowd, retreating to the alley where his monkey companion, Juzi, waited, munching on a stolen peach. "We found him, Juzi," Wei Yun whispered. "But we can't face him yet. We must learn more." That night, Wei Yun infiltrated the Crimson Arena's servant quarters, posing as a healer. He treated wounds, studied the layout, and listened to rumors. The Red Viper, he learned, had risen through a brutal underground league known as the Crimson Hand, a society of assassins trained in forbidden arts, many exiles from orthodox sects. Days turned into weeks. Wei Yun observed and waited, quietly defeating lesser warriors in the nightly undercard battles. His victories were quick and clean, gaining the attention of arena overseers. The Red Viper, amused by the mysterious newcomer, finally issued a public challenge. The arena trembled on the day of the duel. Wei Yun, now a known favorite nicknamed the Silent Blade, stepped into the ring with Juzi perched on his shoulder. Across from him, the Red Viper stood shirtless, muscles like coiled snakes, the flying guillotine gleaming in his hand. The duel was brutal. Wei Yun dodged and countered, his blade a whisper in the wind. The guillotine soared and missed, again and again, until finally Wei Yun used a blinding powder to disrupt the Red Viper's aim and struck him down with a precise, non-lethal blow. As the crowd gasped, Wei Yun stood over the fallen champion and whispered, "Where did you learn that weapon? Who else uses it?" The Red Viper, bloodied and beaten, smirked. "You think I'm the worst? There are 7 more, and one of them waits in the imperial court." Wei Yun's heart sank. The Crimson Arena had been only the beginning. Chapter 4. Shadows Beneath the Lotus Pavilion. As dawn unfurled its golden light across the empire, whispers of the red-eyed monk spread like wildfire. Every tavern, temple, and tea shop buzzed with tales of a one-eyed warrior who fought with a bladed hat and vanished like a ghost. Unbeknownst to the common folk, the legend wasn't merely a tale. It was a harbinger of upheaval. Zhao Han, now a fugitive with a bounty on his head, found refuge beneath the crumbling arches of the Lotus Pavilion, an abandoned monastery tucked in the foothills of the Jade Valley. Here, amid the silence of lotus petals and broken statues, he trained under Master Bai, a hermit sage who once belonged to the same imperial assassin S-Guild Zhao had escaped. Master Bai was frail but sharp, his hands steady as he guided Zhao through the ninefold petal form, a saber technique lost to time. "These movements," Bai explained, "are not for war. They are for truth." As Zhao sharpened his skills, rumors reached the valley. General Shen, leader of the Crimson Banner Army, had commissioned an elite group of Flying Guillotine users to hunt him. These assassins, known as the Ghost Talons, operated from the shadows, answering only to blood-stained scrolls. Zhao knew he couldn't remain hidden. The Lotus Pavilion's sanctity was thinning. One night, as mist cloaked the hills, the first Ghost Talon arrived, a woman named Zilin, whose weapon was a twin-bladed fan laced with guillotine edges. They clashed beneath moonlight. The duel was poetic and ruthless, petals flying as blades danced. Zhao, though outmatched in finesse, relied on instinct and resolve. With a final counter from the 9th petal, he disarmed her, but spared her life. "I came to kill a monster," Zilin whispered, "but found a man who seeks justice." She vanished, leaving behind a crimson seal, a symbol that other Ghost Talons would follow. In the days that followed, Zhao and Master Bai prepared. More enemies would come, each deadlier than the last. But within the Lotus Pavilion's serene decay, something new had taken root. Purpose. As Chapter 4 closes, Zhao dons a weathered crimson cloak once worn by Bai. He walks beyond the monastery walls, saber sheathed, head held high. He is no longer just the red-eyed monk. He is a storm building on the horizon. Chapter 5. The Crimson Path. Night fell like a velvet shroud over the marshlands of Xishan, where reeds whispered secrets to the moon. Lin Yue, now carrying the stolen blueprint of the Flying Guillotine, moved with caution. His cloak was tattered, blood from the last encounter still drying on the hem, but his spirit burned brighter than ever. The blueprint revealed a flaw, one minor, nearly imperceptible fault in the guillotine's chain mechanism. If timed precisely, the weapon could be halted mid-flight. Lin Yue's eyes gleamed. This was the advantage he needed. Yet before he could act, a shadow blocked the stars. From the darkness stepped a man with braided hair and jade talismans ringing from his belt. "You carry what does not belong to you," the man said. Lin Yue raised his guard. "Then come take it." What followed was a blur, a battle of blades and deception, of wind slicing through marshy air. The man was Lei Zhen, last disciple of the Southern Celestial sect, a sect destroyed years ago by the Emperor's purges. And now, like Lin Yue, he sought vengeance. When swords clashed and words were spent, Lei Zhen extended a hand. "Alone, we are ghosts. Together, we are a storm." The alliance was sealed in firelight. Meanwhile, far to the west, General Han of the Iron Phoenix Division read of Lin Yue's theft with mounting fury. The Flying Guillotine was to be his triumph, the symbol of absolute authority. He dispatched assassins with names like Silent Crane and Boneflower. Lin Yue and Lei Zhen traveled through cursed temples, befriended spirit walkers, and even dared speak with the monks of the Forbidden Bell Monastery. With every step, Lin Yue's name spread. To rebels, he was hope. To the empire, he was a disease. In the ancient city of Yulu, they uncovered the tomb of Master Shen Long, the guillotine's original creator. There, amidst murals of chaos and peace, Lin Yue made a vow. "I will end this weapon's reign of terror, even if it costs my life." Lei Zhen placed a hand on the stone wall. "Then let the blood that built this kingdom wash it clean." Chapter 6. The Emperor's Shadow. Smoke coiled lazily from the incense burners of Xiangfang Palace, where the Emperor's throne loomed beneath banners embroidered with dragons and crimson stars. In the shadows of the court, cloaked figures listened to the furious whisper of General Han. "The thief grows bold. Lin Yue has uncovered the flaw. If he reaches the capital, the guillotine is finished." The emperor, his face hidden behind a golden veil of silk, said only 4 words. "Then let him burn." Miles away, Lin Yue and Lei Zhen trudged through the black wind gorges, where the wind howled like mourning ghosts. Word of their mission spread like wildfire. Along the path, peasants whispered blessings, offered rice and tea, and in return, Lin Yue offered hope that tyranny could bleed. But the empire struck first. In the mountain pass of Jianyun, Silent Crane descended like death. Draped in robes of black feathers, she moved without sound, her blade laced with paralyzing venom. The duel left scars on both sides. Lei Zhen nearly lost an arm, and Lin Yue's heart cracked when he realized just how far the Emperor's reach extended. That was only the beginning. Chapter 7. The Court of Shadows. Wei Yun stood atop the eastern gates of Lianzhou, wind pressing at his tattered robes. His thoughts lingered on the Red Viper's final words, 7 more, and 1 in the imperial court. The Crimson Arena had not brought closure, but a grim revelation. The Flying Guillotine was not a solitary weapon. It was a legacy, dispersed and dangerous. His companion, Zhuzi, sat quietly on his shoulder, munching a roasted chestnut they had bartered for earlier. Below, the streets bustled with springtime commerce, unaware that blades of old moved beneath their feet. In the days following the duel, Wei Yun scoured the remnants of the Crimson Hand's underground sanctum, discovering an etched mural depicting 7 masked figures. Each bore a name: the Viper, the Crane, the Lantern, the Widow, the Mirror, the Fang, the Hound. At the center stood a shadowed form, wearing imperial robes. That figure Wei Yun realized was the Emperor himself. It was time to move to the capital. Disguised as a wandering poet-physician, Wei Yun journeyed west, tending wounds and reciting verses. Each village he passed echoed with news of a mysterious healer with the soul of a warrior. His legend bloomed, and soon he found himself invited into the retinue of Lord Shirong, a minor noble with deep ties to the royal court. At the capital, known as Yong'an, golden roofs pierced the sky like dragon fangs. Intrigue ruled the palace halls as much as the ministers. Wei Yun kept his head low, observing, waiting. And finally, opportunity arrived in the form of an imperial summons. He was to treat a sickly scholar, Lord Jiang, a pale man draped in white, always carrying a silver mirror at his hip. The mirror. Wei Yun recognized the glint in Jiang's eyes, the calculating stillness, the hint of violence buried beneath gentility. Days passed in silent tension. Lord Jiang would often speak in riddles. How sharp must a blade be to cut fate itself? What if monsters wear masks of civility? Then one night, under a blood moon, Lord Jiang finally said, "If you wish to understand, go to the Temple of Whispering Winds." Wei Yun obeyed. In the ancient forest outside Yong'an, ruins rose like forgotten bones. Within the temple lay masks mounted on decaying pillars, each corresponding to the names he had seen. And at the altar, a scroll. It told of the Guillotine sect, once royal enforcers before betrayal cast them into shadow. The emperor had turned on them, fearing their power. The survivors scattered, their identities buried. Wei Yun clenched his fists. His mission was no longer revenge alone. It was justice. Justice for the forgotten. And judgment for those who created monsters. Chapter 8. The Emperor's Shadow. The imperial capital of Shangdu lay beneath a veil of mist, its towering pagodas and sprawling palaces basking in the early morning sun. Wei Yun stood at the city gates, cloaked in humble robes, eyes scanning the horizon, where guards in imperial crimson passed in rigid formation. Zhuzi, his ever-loyal monkey companion, sat perched on his shoulder, chittering softly. Their journey from the Crimson Arena had been long and perilous, tracing the Red Viper's dying words. One of them waits in the imperial court. Now, that lead had brought Wei Yun into the lion's den. To reach the heart of the empire, Wei Yun took on the guise of a traveling physician, a reputation already built from his previous healing in the arenas. Word of his talent spread quickly, and he was soon summoned to treat minor nobles. Through hushed conversations and veiled glances, he learned of the secretive Shadow Pavilion, the Emperor's hidden faction of warriors and spies, many of whom were said to use arcane weapons and forbidden martial techniques. It was during one such visit that he met Lady May, a courtier renowned for her beauty and insight. Unlike the others, she saw through Wei Yun's facade. "You're not here to heal," she whispered, after dismissing her maids. "You seek something darker." Wei Yun didn't deny it. "The Flying Guillotine. I must find who commands it from within the court." Lady May's gaze sharpened. "Then you must enter the pavilion. But know this, no one who enters ever leaves the same." With her help, Wei Yun received an invitation, a ceremonial test masked as a demonstration of loyalty. In the dead of night, he was blindfolded and led beneath the imperial palace, through candle-lit tunnels carved of ancient stone. There, masked warriors watched as he faced trial, a duel against two pavilion disciples. Using speed, wit, and his honed swordsmanship, Wei Yun emerged victorious. Yet instead of death, he offered mercy, earning the respect of his silent watchers. The pavilion accepted him, naming him Black Petal, a flower that kills in silence. Now inside the Emperor's shadow army, Wei Yun uncovered secrets. The court's obsession with immortality, the hidden forge where flying guillotines were crafted, and above all, the name of the true master, Lord Huo, the Emperor's most trusted advisor. Juzi, now a quiet shadow in the halls, grew restless, and Wei Yun, deeper than ever in enemy ground, knew the war for the Empire's soul had begun. Chapter 9. The Emperor's Blade. Wei Yun stood before the masked warriors of the Shadow Pavilion, his mind sharp, his heart steady. The chilling silence of the chamber weighed heavily on him, but his focus was unwavering. The only sound was the occasional rustle of his monkey companion, Juzi, perched silently on his shoulder. Having proven himself through trial and mercy, Wei Yun had earned a place in the Emperor's most secret faction, but now the true test lay ahead. He had learned of Lord Huo, the Emperor's trusted advisor and the true master of the Flying Guillotine, a weapon of immense power. But to reach him, Wei Yun would need to navigate the deadly intrigue of the palace, where allegiances shifted like shadows in the night. It was in the heart of the palace that Wei Yun first caught sight of Lord Huo. The man was an imposing figure, draped in dark robes that seemed to absorb the very light around him. His eyes were cold and calculating, yet there was a strange intensity in them, a hunger for power that bordered on obsession. Wei Yun, now known as Black Petal among the pavilion's elite, moved among the shadows, learning the secrets of the Emperor's court. The deeper he delved into the hidden underbelly of the palace, the more he realized that Lord Huo's ambitions stretched far beyond the realm of mortal men. Late one night, as Wei Yun infiltrated the palace's forbidden library, he uncovered a dark manuscript. The pages were filled with arcane symbols, ancient formulas, and references to an otherworldly power, the ability to transcend the mortal realm and become something more. It was the Emperor's quest for immortality, a goal that had driven the court to madness. But there was more. The manuscript spoke of a ritual, one that required the blood of the purest warriors, those who wielded the Flying Guillotine with mastery. Wei Yun's blood ran cold as he realized the true scope of Lord Huo's plans. The Emperor, under Huo's influence, intended to use the guillotine to not only control the empire but to ascend to a godlike existence, ruling over both the mortal and immortal realms. The stakes had never been higher. Wei Yun's resolve hardened. He would have to face Lord Huo in a battle that would determine the fate of the entire empire. Meanwhile, Juzi seemed to sense the shift in Wei Yun's thoughts. The monkey, ever loyal, chattered softly, his eyes gleaming with understanding. The time for subtlety was over. Wei Yun knew that to confront Lord Huo and stop the Emperor's descent into madness, he would have to wield the power of the Flying Guillotine himself. And so, as the palace prepared for the grand festival, a celebration of the Emperor's supposed triumph over death, Wei Yun steeled himself for the battle that would determine the future of the empire. Chapter 10. The Final Showdown. The grand festival had arrived. The streets of the imperial city were alive with vibrant colors and celebrations. Musicians played, dancers swirled in intricate patterns, and the scent of roasted meats and sweet pastries filled the air. But beneath the surface of merriment, there was a tension, an electric charge of anticipation that sent shivers down Wei Yun's spine. It was the night of the Emperor's ritual, a night that would mark the beginning of the end for the mortal world. Wei Yun knew that time was running out. The Flying Guillotine had taken too many lives already, and Lord Huo's dark ambitions threatened to consume everything. The Emperor's court, once a symbol of prosperity and power, had turned into a breeding ground for corruption and death. The palace that had once been a place of reverence now held only the scent of betrayal. Wei Yun moved through the crowded streets under the cover of night, his black robes flowing like a shadow. Juzi, his loyal monkey companion, sat perched upon his shoulder, his sharp eyes scanning the surroundings. He could feel the weight of destiny pressing down on him. This would be his greatest test yet. In the heart of the palace, the Emperor sat upon his throne, a figure cloaked in regal splendor. But there was nothing noble in his gaze. His eyes, once warm with the love of his people, were now filled with greed and an insatiable hunger for power. Beside him stood Lord Huo, the mastermind behind it all. His face remained obscured by a mask of black iron, but his presence was undeniable. The Flying Guillotine gleamed in his hand, its sharp blades reflecting the dim light of the torches that lined the throne room. Wei Yun entered the palace grounds under the guise of an entertainer, blending in with the performers and servants. He had come prepared. The time for stealth was over. He needed to strike swiftly and decisively. The air was thick with the scent of incense, and the atmosphere was heavy with the promise of blood. As Wei Yun made his way deeper into the heart of the palace, his mind raced. He had spent years learning the deadly techniques of the Flying Guillotine, studying the ancient manuscripts and hidden scrolls. Now, in the final confrontation, it would be his knowledge and his heart that would determine the outcome. In the imperial chamber, the Emperor began his ritual, chanting the forbidden incantations. The room began to pulse with an unnatural energy. Wei Yun felt the weight of the air shift, as if the very fabric of the world was being torn apart. The power that Lord Huo had sought for so long was now within his reach. But Wei Yun was not afraid. He had fought too many battles, seen too many betrayals to falter now. This was his moment. He could not, and would not, allow the Emperor to become a god. The Empire had suffered enough. He approached the Grand Hall, where Lord Huo and the Emperor stood waiting. As the guards attempted to block his path, Wei Yun dispatched them effortlessly, his movements fluid and precise. His eyes locked onto Lord Huo, the man who had manipulated the Emperor and turned the once mighty empire into a breeding ground for chaos. Lord Huo's cold laugh echoed through the hall as he stepped forward, the Flying Guillotine gleaming in his hand. "You think you can stop this? The Emperor is already beyond your reach." Wei Yun's voice was calm but unwavering. "You underestimate me." With a flick of his wrist, Wei Yun unleashed the Flying Guillotine, its deadly blades cutting through the air with a sound like thunder. But Lord Huo was ready. The two warriors clashed in a whirlwind of steel, their blades flashing and whirling with unimaginable speed. The battle was fierce, each blow carrying the weight of an empire's fate. The palace shook with the force of their strikes, and the ground beneath their feet cracked with the intensity of their clash. But Wei Yun had something that Lord Huo did not, a heart unburdened by ambition, a spirit that could not be broken. With a final, blinding move, Wei Yun disarmed Lord Huo, sending the Flying Guillotine flying across the room. He stood over his fallen enemy, his sword raised high. "Your reign of terror ends here." The Emperor, watching from his throne, stood frozen. The ritual was faltering. Without Lord Huo's guidance, the dark power that had been summoned began to unravel. Wei Yun turned toward the emperor, his face expressionless. "It's over." The emperor, broken and frail, slumped in his throne. The thirst for power that had consumed him for so long had led him to ruin. His kingdom was no more. The empire, once mighty, was now crumbling beneath the weight of its own corruption. As the emperor's forces fled, Wei Yun stood victorious, but his heart was heavy. He had saved the empire, but the cost had been great. The Flying Guillotine, once a tool of destruction, had been put to rest. The man who had wielded it with such precision and fearsome power had fallen, and with him, the hope of eternal dominance over the mortal world. Wei Yun knew that this victory was not the end. The world would continue, and the scars left by the battles would take time to heal. But for now, peace had been restored. He turned to Zhuzi, his loyal companion, and they walked away from the crumbling palace, leaving behind a legacy of blood and sacrifice. And though the shadow of the Flying Guillotine would never truly fade, the memory of its destruction would remain a reminder that even the greatest weapons could be overcome by the will of one man. Epilogue. The legacy of the Flying Guillotine. The city of Lianzhou had been forever changed. The Crimson Arena, once a symbol of death and bloodshed, now stood silent, its walls echoing only the whispers of a forgotten past. The streets, once filled with the sound of the clash of steel and the roar of the crowd, now resonated with a deeper quiet, the kind that only comes after a storm has passed. His mind wandered back to the battle that had defined his life, the battle that had taken everything from him and, in the end, had given him the freedom to forge his own destiny. He had once been a wanderer, a shadow in the world of martial arts. But now he was a man who had overcome the darkness of the Flying Guillotine, a man who had brought down the weapon that had haunted him for so long. Zhuzi, his faithful companion, perched on his shoulder, gazing out over the city with an almost human-like intelligence in his eyes. The monkey had been by his side through every step of the journey, a symbol of the loyalty and bonds that could never be broken, no matter the trials. But even in the aftermath of his victory, Wei Yun knew that the story of the Flying Guillotine was not yet over. There were whispers in the wind, stories of other weapons, other masters, who would rise to fill the void left by the Red Viper and his ilk. The martial world was vast, and its dangers unrelenting. Yet Wei Yun had come to understand one fundamental truth. The greatest weapon was not the blade or the guillotine, but the will to choose one's own path. As the sun began to set, casting a soft orange glow over the city, Wei Yun felt a sense of peace he had never known. The darkness of the past had been left behind, and in its place, a new dawn was breaking. He was no longer a mere survivor of a brutal world. He was the architect of his own fate. With a final glance at the arena, Wei Yun turned away. His journey was far from over, but now, it was a journey he chose to walk with purpose. "Let's go, Zhuzi," he whispered softly, his voice filled with quiet determination. Together they disappeared into the horizon, leaving behind a legacy that would be remembered not for the bloodshed, but for the courage it took to end it. And so, the story of the Flying Guillotine came to an end, only to become the beginning of something greater.